You are listening to AVFC Extra, a no-nonsense look at the club we all love. Brought to you by the Claret and Blue podcast. Hello and welcome back to AVFC Extra. My name is Dan Rolinson. Today filling in for James Rushton, but please do bear with me because I'm nowhere near as intelligent as James is. Joining me today, though, are two people who definitely know what they're talking about. Patrick Rowe and Josh Williams. Gents, how are we?
Yeah, I'm good. A bit cold and I'm not allowed to put the heating on, so just suffering in my own room.
I'm okay, mate. Yeah, I'm warm down my end. But yeah, first appearance of the season on the Villa pod. So thanks for getting me on.
No worries. You've always been a well-received guest every time you come on and spoken. You usually come on with James Rushton, and I'm filling in for James today, and I'm far less intelligent than James is, so I'm literally just here to ask the questions and nothing more. I've even got my laptop in front of me with things written down, so do excuse me if I just keep looking at those. First of all, though, just very easy, just a general kind of overview of the game. Pat, you were there. Josh, you've seen the full thing as well. Pat, start with you. How did you see the game and the atmosphere? What did you think?
In general, before the game, I felt like everyone was really excited. I went to a pub beforehand and everyone just get pretty excited for the game. But then first 10 minutes, it was electric, I thought. We were pretty loud and the style of play was quite exciting. I think Matty Cash had that header quite early on and we thought it was just amazing. I think the style of play was pretty evident from them, but obviously Brighton grew into the game and it kind of killed our momentum and killed the atmosphere a bit, I thought. I think the tension started getting a bit high. Everyone got a bit nervous, and then obviously we relieved it in the last 10 minutes, so it was fine. But other than that, yeah, it was a bit of a nervous start, but it panned out quite well.
Yeah, I thought it was quite a disciplined start. I thought not too gung-ho, really, not too front foot. Even though I thought that was a possibility, given Gerrard's nature as a coach and as a player. I thought there was the possibility there with it being a home game and stuff that Villa would be very, a bit of a high press early on and things like that. But it wasn't the case. It was kind of like a very much a don't concede approach, I thought. And then if you end up making a goal, if you end up winning the game, so be it. And obviously that was the case by the end of the match. But I think generally as a starting point, as a foundation to build from, I thought it was a good start, yeah.
I almost made a joke on the podcast about having a swear jar for every time we mention Liverpool, but we can't have a Liverpool fan on and not mention Liverpool. So let's get it out of the way early doors. What's it like having Steven Gerrard, a club legend, manage another Premier League club? Have you got a bit of a soft spot for Villa now? To be fair, I feel like you've had a soft spot anyway, because you always speak very well about Villa whenever you come on.
Well, to be fair, a lot of that stems from the feedback that I get. The feedback's generally very, very positive. So if people are praising me, I can't have any sort of issue, can I? But yeah, in terms of Gerrard, it is a bit strange, but it's nice because it's, I suppose, one of the first proper player that I watched growing up is now a coach. Whereas obviously, Graham Souness went into management and things like that, but I never saw Souness play really. So to be able to follow Gerrard, particularly in the Premier League, and everyone knows I'm very numbers focused, and the numbers in the Scottish Premiership are not really as accurate, they're not really as reliable because Rangers are so dominant. So from a numbers side of things, I'm interested to follow Stevie and see how he gets on and things like that. And obviously, from my perspective, being a Liverpool fan, Jurgen Klopp's contract is supposed to run out in 2024. I know Villa fans will not appreciate me saying this, but it's just a natural thing to think about whether Gerrard could be in a potential next in line type thing, but we won't even go there.
Yeah, we'll talk about positive feedback. There might not be any after you've mentioned that in the first 3 minutes. So let's move swiftly on. Let's talk about the game then. We'll come to you for this one, Pat. Obviously, it probably affects the Villa fan more. When the team news came out at 2:00, what did you think?
With the injury news and different things like that, he had his hands tied and he could only do so much. I think Nakamba was always going to have to come in because Douglas Luiz was out. Bertrand Traore not fit. Sanson's probably not fully fit to get firing. So he put the team out that we probably all expected. I think I thought Ollie Watkins would play out wide to start with, and I thought there was promising signs there. Danny Ings back in the side after that little injury. I'm not sure what his injury was, but he's back inside. He was a bit of a bystander for most of it, which was a bit disappointing. I think someone just commented there saying the only worry they have is Ings and how he'll fit in. I think one of my first reports for Reach PLC was based off what Josh said about Ings, and it was Ings offers a lot more than just being like a goal scorer and dropping deep. So I don't know if Gerrard will try and get the best out of Ings in that way and drop him a bit deeper as things move on. But yeah, he did everything he can with the team news, I thought.
Danny Ings was further down my agenda that we've written beforehand with the help of James. So we'll just go in now because Nathan's mentioned him that it's a worry that Ings isn't quite slotting into the side really. On paper, he's a guaranteed goal scorer, isn't it? It's just not quite clicking.
It's one of those. I don't think he's not been clinical apart from that. The only one the glaring miss in my head that he's had is the Wolves one where it was quite early on and he went the wrong side of the keeper and I think the keeper saved it or it went wide. Other than that, I think he's done as much as he can with what he's had. I think we've struggled to get the ball into his feet and get him on the ball and like supply him at all because we were playing the 5 at the back. I think him and Watkins struggled to form a partnership up top together and he'd rarely ever touch the ball. I think he's had like 14 touches of the ball on average or something stupid like that. The most promising game for me was probably, or a hint at what could happen, was his role in the build-up for the Watkins goal against Spurs. Dropped a bit deeper, fed the ball off to him driving at the defence, fed the ball off to the target who had space then, and then he fired it across to Watkins. So there are promising signs. Obviously, he's a natural born goal scorer and he is going to score. So the goals against Wolves, the Newcastle goal, which is a freak one, just shows his finishing ability. But yeah, I think it's not that worrying, but we do need to get him more involved.
In the summer, I think we did a transfers pod and I got asked about just Villa's general business, and I was generally positive towards it. Because Villa, at the end of the day, have acquired good players, and that's the main thing, really. But I was curious at the time. I remember flagging how is Smith going to fit these players in specifically? Because you've signed Danny Ings, who is a striker. You already have a fixed striker who plays every week, very, very injured. You've signed a wide player who basically spends all of his time on the flanks in Leon Bailey, and you've signed a player in Buendia who I suppose does a little bit of both. So I was curious to see how that was going to work, how that was going to fit. And I wrote a piece a few weeks back for the Birmingham Mail just on, I think, with the business Villa have done, they've kind of tied the hands a little bit when it comes to systems and formations and stuff, if you want every player in his best position, basically, because Watkins is a striker, Ings is a striker, so you have to play a front two. But then you also have Bailey, who's a wide player, so you have to play a front two that incorporates a system where you play a wide player as well, which 4-4-2 immediately comes to mind, or a back five or something like that. But then you've got Bailey playing as a wing back, which you don't want. And Buendia, just feels like Buendia is floating a little bit, doesn't it? I'm sure we'll get to him, but in terms of Ings, I do think he works best as part of a front two. And I think Gerrard's first match, he didn't play a front two, but he played like a fluid front three, I thought, where he was quite interchangeable and he was players at least around Ings for him to work off and things like that. But I do think he conflicts a little bit with Buendia.
What do you make of Watkins out wide then? Because Watkins is the number 9, he's the main striker, he was all of last season. And when you say it as bluntly as you sign these players that you don't really fit into a system together, it is confusing even now, 12 games in, of what system is best for Villa. I'm a little bit reluctant to judge the new signings too much because they've had 10, 11 games under Dean Smith and now the rest of the season under a new coach. So I'm willing to give them a bit of leeway. But like you say, we'll touch on Buendia, but he doesn't look particularly fit still after 4 or 5 months, which is a concern in itself. Pat, your thoughts on Watkins out wide? Because that is one way of getting them both into the side, but Watkins' goal comes when he's shifted into the centre. Like
Josh said, it was kind of like a fluid front three that he wanted to play, so it was like an inside forward. And I think I've wrote about it like countless amount of times before the first game. It was saying how he likes his forward, like the wider forwards, to be able to cut in quite early and get shots off on a goal. And obviously, I think there's a hint that it could happen to good effect because Watkins' goal was a perfect example of that. To be honest, I know it came when he was a striker, but it came from a wide position where he's cutting goal inside and had a shot on goal and it's gone in. So that might be a hint that you can play Watkins and Ings together. I thought even in the first half, there's a few times where Watkins was driving at the defence. I think he was just slowing the play down a bit too much. Like there was a lot of one-touch passes going on, and he was just slowing it down a bit and losing possession. But promising signs there, to be honest. What do we make of the 2 goals, by the way? They kind of show, I'm very much simplifying this here, you can tell this isn't James on this episode, but that first goal is a nice fluid counter-attack where it's calming possession at the back and playing it forward, and to be fair, it's a great finish, and I think Gerrard called it world class. But the second goal, Mings keeping the ball alive, the overlapping fullback, and then the finish as well. Does that kind of show the fight and desire that Gerrard will want to implement? That was something that Gerrard's always offered throughout his career, as a person and stuff. And I think at Rangers it boiled over a little bit a few times because I think early in his tenure, he was just suffering a red card every single week.
But if you look at Tyrone Mings and the type of person he is, I think he seems to be a player who certainly receives some form of boost, some form, that new manager kick type thing. So I think seeing Mings under Gerrard will be interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing that. But in terms of the goals, I must be honest, although I'd like it to be a difference, I think the goals just stem from, I don't think they stem from Gerrard. I don't think they stem from any specific team ploy or anything like that, or anything specific that has been worked on. I think they just kind of happened, moments of individual brilliance. I think in Mings' luck, just kind of making it happen by being in the right place at the right time. I will say I did like Watkins' goal in terms of the way it worked. Actually Young carrying the ball forward, and I think was it El Ghazi who took the players away and created the space inside for Watkins to cut into. That worked nicely, but I think generally Gerrard's early work was mostly on the defensive side of the game, which is understandable because that's generally easier to instill basically, whereas the attack and play on the coaching ground and things like that tends to come with time.
You did a tweet, I can't remember the specifics, I think it was potentially about the press of the top 5 leagues, and I joked to you and said, stick Gerrard's Rangers in there, and it put him up level with Barcelona and Bayern Munich, I think, which kind of shows how the leagues compare. But how long will it take Gerrard to implement a style of football and play the way he wants to play? It's not something that happens overnight. And, we said in our post-match podcast, literally straight after the game, where I felt there were still times during that game where we didn't look great. It's not been this massive transformation overnight, and not a fat lot's changed. Obviously, there are some changes there. How long will it take for him to fully implement that kind of style of play, Josh?
On the ball, I don't think we'll see proper Gerrard Villa until probably next season, and he gets a full summer break with them and things like that, and he gets to work on those patterns and stuff, and maybe even recruit a few of his own players, get rid of a few players who he's not particularly keen on. But I think defensively, even though it's been one game, I do think we saw a lot of what to expect from Gerrard's Villa. I think there was a lot to identify there with what Gerrard's trying to do, and notable differences compared to when Smith was in charge. So I think defensively, we will see a fair bit. Maybe not on the high pressing side, because I think that requires a bit more cohesion, a bit more coaching behind the scenes. But in terms of what we saw against Brighton, I think that was very much. It was clear to see for me that a new coach was in charge. It was clear to see that it was, Gerrard's type of block. But the attacking play, as I said, I think will take a bit more time.
Yeah, I thought the style of just off the ball, what he outlined that he wanted to put his own stamp on things. I think it was immediate that was happening, like the traps he was setting and stuff. But there were lapses in concentration. Obviously, that's going to happen because he's only been in charge. I think it was 9 days. But yeah, the signs were there, but the consistency wasn't. So I think that will just come with time.
Josh, do you think the players are fit enough to play that kind of high press at the moment? Because this is something that fans have been a little bit concerned with. That Buendia is one that stands out straight away, but it is an intense style of play. To implement. Are the players ready for that?
Just on that, before I talk about this, what is this about Buendia? Because I wasn't aware that he was suffering from any sort of fitness. Is he?
There was a game when he went down with cramp after 60-odd minutes.
Two games. It was the Wolves game and Southampton.
There's clearly a quality player in there, but he either seems to flag towards 60, 70 minutes where he goes down with some kind of cramp or feels a bit lightweight. He's an easy one to dig out because he's a big signing who isn't performing very well. And when they go off after 65 minutes with cramp or something, we kind of look at it and go, why aren't you fully fit yet? Yeah,
when I had to look at Buendia a few years back, I think his off-the-ball numbers, I think he posted decent pressure numbers and stuff like that. So I don't think a high press is off the cards with Buendia. And I wouldn't particularly say it's too much of a fitness thing. Don't get me wrong, if you're going to start pressing like monsters, it might be a bit different and you might get a few hamstring injuries and things like that. But I think generally I wouldn't put it down to a fitness thing. I'd put it more of a strategic thing, whether it makes sense for Villa to do it or whether it doesn't. I think if Villa were playing Norwich or even like an Arsenal maybe, who are absolutely wedded to building from the back, I think it might be a bit different, and maybe Stevie would have pressed a little bit higher. But I think in this game, considering how capable Brighton are, how much he can stretch the play and things like that, and some of the players in their midfield, Yves Bissouma comes to mind as a player who's really difficult to dispossess and stuff. So I think it just made sense to just show pressure a little bit more. But I think we'll see a bit of a high press in matches where Villa are favourites and where Villa can really impose their game upon the opposing team. But in this game, I really liked how Villa approached the game defensively. One of the first things I really noted was he was quite clearly an emphasis on blocking the centre of the pitch. The centre of the pitch was very much Villa's, and it was a case of like, we're going to block passing lanes to the centre of the pitch. We're going to occupy the centre of the pitch with players. So you're going to build out wide. And if you want to play through us, fine, but we'll be stepping on your toes immediately. So you can play around us if you want. And as a result of doing that, Villa suffered at times because of how good Lamptey is, basically. And Cucurella's good on the opposite side as well. But in terms of that being a strategy for the season, moving forward, I think it makes sense. And if you look at just some of the numbers behind the game, I think it was the most crosses that Brighton have put in a Premier League game this season. And it was the most crosses that Villa have faced in a Premier League game this season. And I think it stemmed from Gerrard placing an emphasis on, the middle of the pitch is ours. We're only allowing you to advance down the wide areas, basically.
Pat, what did you think of his in-game management? Sort of talk about the substitutions changing the game, but even the last substitution, I can't remember who it was. I think it was potentially El Ghazi, maybe. But we were going to look to kill the game off with the second goal rather than sit back and be happy with a 1-0.
Yeah, I think in previous years, Villa have probably been guilty of sitting back when we got a 1-0 lead and just hoping for the best. So it was quite nice to see us still pushing for that goal. And yeah, the substitutions were inspired, to be honest. I think Dean Smith got stick for putting Ashley Young at centre mid, and it was his West Ham game. But Gerrard did the same here, and he showed his composure, breaking play up and threading that ball in. And then another substitute, El Ghazi, was the one that peeled the defenders away for Watkins to cut inside, and we've scored. So yeah, it was very good in-game management. And once again, it was a limited squad, I thought, like with what he could do with injuries and whatnot. Morgan Sanson was warming up for quite a while. Keenan Davis was warming up as well, so I didn't know which direction he was going to go in really, but no, he made the right decision.
I think Brighton pulled both their fullbacks off as well at one stage and brought Mopé on, and that kind of changed the game from their perspective as well. A bit riskier as Villa fans of getting a little bit too carried away after one win here, Josh, because Brighton are a good side to be fair, and it's still a great result with a clean sheet, but there's still plenty of work to be done, isn't there?
There is, but I don't think you're getting too carried away, to be honest. I think it could have easily been a 0-0. I think that's worth saying, that's worth remembering. And I do think the attacking work will come with time. I think it'll take a bit of time for Gerrard to get his attacking play, into the players' heads, and it'll take a bit of time for them to just generally figure out who to play where, who is worth relying on as a starter all the time, and who's maybe better off from the bench as an impact sub. But generally, I, as a Villa supporter, if I was a Villa supporter, I'd be very encouraged by specifically the defensive work that Villa showed. It was a mid-block, it wasn't too deep, it wasn't too high. As I said, very difficult to play through in the central areas. Emphasis of to build out wide and things like that for the opposing team. And I think generally that's just very difficult to play against. And if you look at Gerrard's record in Europe, when he was at Rangers, I think that was the case. Obviously in Europe, he's very unlikely to adopt a high pressing game just because of the quality of some of the European teams. But generally, I think Villa will become very difficult to beat. And then more, with time. Like Villa, in this game, Villa faced, I think it was 6 shots. That's very, very good. If you face 6 shots every week, you will win the majority of games, or certainly you won't lose many at least. So on the defensive side, I'd be very, very encouraged, really. But as I said, the attacking side might just need a bit of patience.
Let's look at a couple of individuals then. First of all, we've mentioned Buendia and Ings already. John McGinn, I've written here that he started well and ended well, and I thought for a middling part of the game he didn't really do much, but we all think that he's going to be pretty important to the way that Gerrard wants to play. Pat, what did you make of McGinn on Saturday?
Yeah, I thought his work rate was fantastic throughout the game, to be honest. He was also, I think he did that roulette spin that we all like to do every single game. That's when he's back at his best if he's doing that. But yeah, his work rate was impeccable. Like when the fullbacks were getting forward, him and Ramsey were just shifting over, covering them, which is what I think Gerrard's going to ask of the midfield. I think he's the perfect mould for Gerrard's midfielders that he wants. Gerrard's in the past has said that John McGinn was like, when he wanted to sign him for Rangers, he was saying, John McGinn should goal for it. That's where your goals are going to come from. And we might see John McGinn pushed forward a bit further forward than Gerrard. But yeah, I thought it was a classic John McGinn performance, like defensive work rate, quality on the ball, putting crosses in, beating players. Low centre of gravity, hard to get off the ball. So yeah, I was very happy with it.
Is it just a case of finding more consistency from John McGinn? Because he has these games where he looks brilliant, and then he has 2 or 3 where you think, what is he doing?
Yeah, I think it's just finding the position he wants to play as well, because I think he's been in a midfield too, he's been in a defensive midfield role, he's been further forward in a cam. If we can just get him like solidified in this one role, then I think he'll thrive and get some consistency under his belt. But he can't get the consistency if we're changing what he's doing each week, which is what Smith was doing at times, I thought.
And we're going to end up talking about every individual here, because there's comments from Ian Robertson saying Ramsey's looking a player, and Philip Johnson says that Nakamba went underrated in our side and he did very well against Brighton as well. So Josh, I'll come to you on the midfield just as a whole, because that has been the problem position for Villa, but seemed to be heading in the right direction on Saturday.
Yeah, I thought it was a good idea to use a midfield three, actually. I thought Nakamba was suited to, just extinguishing fires and breaking up play and things like that. And as I said, if the ball comes through the middle of the park, straight away, Villa are kind of on you like dogs, really. And I think Nakamba's very suited to that style of play. And then you've got John McGinn, who, as Pat just said there, I think he's quite an all-rounder, really, but he's also inclined to nick the odd goal. So when that's the case, I think it's nice to deploy those players as number 8s rather than in a double 6. Just because if he's a number 8, he can arrive late in the box and things like that. And I think McGinn's got a goal in him. So if he's part of a trio rather than part of a 2, he's just got that bit more freedom to go more forward as opposed to, more side to side. And Ramsey does look a play, yeah, looks very good. Just on Buendia as well, just rolling it back a little bit. If you look at Gerrard's squad when everyone's fit, if you're sticking with that front 3, and it could consist of Ings, Watkins, and probably Bailey's going to be a starter, I think there's the possibility there that you could potentially feel Buendia as number 8 there. The system would have to be really good by then, I think. I think the system would have to be ingrained in them. So maybe it's a bit of a risk to do it now. But I think if you've got Buendia as 8 and you've got players ahead of him, one of the, he does thrive as like a, feeding players, his vision's good, through ball and things like that. So if he's got 3 runners ahead of him, I think it'll benefit him. And as I said, his defensive numbers when I looked a few years back were good. But as I said, the system would have to be really good by that point, and he'd probably have to be alongside 2 others who are really, really good defensively and really strong physical.
Target, who's again a bit of a Marmite player, I thought he was pretty good against Brighton, if not spectacular. I've seen a few calls for man of the match and then a few calls to say that he's nowhere near good enough to get rid of him. So not quite sure how both of you two assess Target, but there's been links in various sources about a new left back and Gerrard going out for elite left back or whatever the headline was in the Sun. I think less said about that the better. But I thought Matt Target was all right.
I'm a big fan of Target. I thought this was his best game of the season. I thought he was back to the type of player that we were seeing consistently last season. 3 key passes, 7 tackles, and I thought he dealt with Lamptey quite well, to be honest. Sorry, I'm going to mute my mic. I need to cough.
Yeah, I think he's decent, but I do think he's upgradable, if I'm honest. I think if you look at him as a profile, what he offers as a player, for me, he is a Premier League fullback, I think, but probably between 20th and 10th. I think he's inside that. I think if aspiring for a little bit better, which Villa obviously seem to be, I'm just not sure he's really pushing that level. I think if you look at his skill set, for example, compared to Cash on the opposite side, I don't see much attached to Target's game that you could apply in a tactical sense. Where you think, like, say, for example, with Cash, he's quite clearly a good runner, for example. So you could say to Cash, which Gerrard seems to do, arrive late in the box, that sort of thing. He's good with deliveries and things like that. I think Target's delivery's okay, but he's not particularly fast. He's not particularly strong. He just seems to be okay at everything. And his best performance would probably be a 7, possibly an 8 out of 10 or something like that. Maybe I'm being too harsh, but from an outside perspective, I think if you're aiming really, really high, I think you could probably upgrade on Target and just get a player who you could be a bit more, you could run the play through a bit more. Because I think from an opposition perspective, if Target's got the ball, I think you probably feel relatively safe, maybe.
Yeah.
But let me know if I'm being too harsh there.
No, I think some of that is fair. I would counter that with the fact that he was player of the season last year. But I think that some fans have got this theory that he performed better when there was no crowd there, and maybe the pressure gets to him more so than some players. Ian Robinson says Target was at a consistent 8 pretty much every game last season, which, yeah, I think that's fair. But this year he hasn't been, and you're right, Josh, to say that he is easily upgradable.
To be honest, though, he's probably the type of player who you would try to upgrade and by like maybe half a season later, he's back in the team because he is, as you say, very reliable. I think you could probably level that him. He's very reliable. Although I said he's maximum capable of an 8, maybe. He's probably very rarely drops below a 6 as well. So he is the type of player who you can probably count on. And as I said, if he did try to upgrade by getting a more fashionable, fancy fullback, maybe that player wouldn't offer the same consistency. And as I said, Tiger could be back in the team before too long. So, yeah, maybe I'm being too harsh on it.
You could probably level a lot of the things you've just said at Tyrone Mings, potentially. Some corners of the fan base don't rate him at all. I am a Tyrone Mings fan. We actually had a comment down the last podcast saying, you spent the 20 minutes digging out Buendia. Why don't you dig out Tyrone Mings? It's like, well, he scored in this game. Like, let's give him a break at some stage. He played very well. Again, of course, for the man of the match from some quarters as well. But some of the things you've just said there about potentially being easily upgradable with some funds available could be said about Tyrone Mings as well.
I thought it was quite reactionary, to be honest. I think Gerrard came out and said, I'm not going to change the captain, but he's going to be given an opportunity to prove himself. And I think he took the first opportunity that he got. I think he was dominant in the air. He was decisive with his decision making and got rid of the ball when he read the game quite well. He put the ball into touch when he needed to. Just dealt with everything they asked. And he was also quite a big threat from set pieces, I thought. There was a header, I think, that was well saved, that was going in, I'm pretty sure, from Jason Steele. And then obviously he got his goal with his right foot running onto it at pace.
And he kept the ball in as well. Good work.
Yeah, he did, yeah. A bit of a hustle there. So, yeah, I was very, very impressed. I thought it was his best game of the season, to be honest. And I hopefully his confidence is high moving forward.
Well, saying that about him and Target, where fans have maybe gone into this game and the Gerrard era thinking they might be two that drop straight out. That's some reaction from those two. Josh, what about you?
No, I would be very surprised if Mings dropped out of the team under Gerrard. Because, what I've just been mentioning about Target, I think if you apply the same thinking to Mings in terms of what he offers in a tactical sense, he does offer perks. He is very physical, very tall, good in the air. And he's quite mobile as well, considering the size and stuff like that. And he's obviously got character traits that suggest he's a bit of a leader because he's worn the armband a few times and things like that. So I think he is a player you can build on. I understand when it comes to frustrations around him, because I think his biggest issue is probably his focus, maybe at times. I think he's prone to making the odd bad decision, and I think he's almost prone to almost playing in a way that's. I think sometimes he thinks he's better than he actually is, and that's not like a major criticism. But when it comes to the focus, I think Gerrard in particular will help a lot with that, because if there's one thing Gerrard is and has been for as long as I've known him, it's been just incredibly focused, so driven and focused on the task at hand. You can see that in the way he speaks, the press conferences and stuff like that. So I think he will get it in Mings' head that, you focus, no casual elements to your game for 90 minutes. But I do think those casual elements are attached to his game, and they have been maybe growing in prominence over the past 12 months or so. But I do think he's capable. He's got the natural qualities to be a really sensible player to Villa's, rise under Gerrard.
They say a lot, don't they, about that, you don't just become a good coach because you're a good player, but the mental aspect of winning every week and wanting to be competitive, that has to count for something, surely.
Some areas of the Premier League throw a little bit of shade towards his way when it comes to, we never won a Premier League, or that, the slip and all that sort of stuff, and comparisons to Lampard and Scholes and things. And I'm just, obviously I know what the Liverpool perception is. The Liverpool perception is that he's Mr. Perfect, essentially. But I am curious as to what it was like from a Villa perspective when he was first linked, or when he was a player. I remember a specific goal he scored against Villa a few years back, free kick, last minute of the game. But yeah, he's a top player, top person, super focused, and I am really interested to see how he does as a coach in the Premier League now.
We will end soon. We've got a couple of questions from fans that have been sent in as well. Somebody asked whether we were witnessing an actual step up and something tangible to look onto, or whether it's just that classic first manager bounce kind of thing that you win the first game that they come under. I assume you both agree that there is actual tangible changes being made here.
I did a report on it a few days ago. I looked at the report and it was like new manager bounce actually gives you something on 0.7 points on average, like an increase in the first 6 games. So it actually is a thing, like the new manager bounce. But I think there are changes similar to Rangers. He went in and he solidified them at the back. They went from 50 goals to 23, I think, then to 13. So that was clear from the first game that we just looked even out of our possession. We looked very solid defensively, like Josh said. Like it was disciplined. So I think in terms of that area, we are going to improve like straight away. It is a step up because we've been leaking goals for fun recently.
I agree. Yeah, I think, as I said, I think the 2 goals, I do think they just kind of happened. So you could put that down to a bounce. You could put that down to luck, whatever you want. So in that sense, I suppose, you're not gonna keep scoring goals like that, basically. But on the defensive side of the game, that was not a fluke that Villa only faced 6 shots. It was not a fluke that Brighton put in the most crosses they put in any game, and Villa faced the most shots that they faced in any game. Those are intentional, and if you keep working from that base, as I said, Villa are going to be very difficult to play against, I think. Very difficult to play through. And obviously, one of the strengths of Mings in particular, and I think Courtney House as well, usually posts very, very good numbers when it comes to this, is the aerial strength. Yeah. So if you are going to put lots of crosses in, and you've got centre-halves who are good in the air, they get dealt with more often than not. So I do think Villa will become a very difficult side to play against. It comes to mind a few years back. I think Nuno Espirito Santo's Wolves beat a few of the top teams, and the likes of City and Liverpool and Chelsea, whenever it was going to Wolves, it was deemed as like, oh, this potential banana skin here. I think Villa might transform into something like that, where like they do put a few scars on the top sides and start making waves a little bit.
Yeah, we had that record last season, didn't we? We were good against the top sides, and our season fell apart because we were losing the games you expect to win. The comment here from Joe, J-O-H, what's his views on our youth and in playing them? That was very heavily mentioned by Purslow in his announcement. Josh, from his record with the Liverpool Academy or under-18s manager, or under-23s, I can't remember what it was specifically, but anything you can shed on that side?
Bottom line is, though, if you're good enough and you apply yourself, I think that's the crucial element of you apply yourself. If he feels you're ready and you're going to contribute on a pitch, you're not going to be out muscled or out fought or anything like that, or you're going to suffer mentally, I think he will play it. And Villa do seem to have quite a few kids who have got bags of potential. There's a lad up front who comes to mind. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce his name, but I think it's a very long name beginning with a C.
Chucklemaker. Yeah,
he comes to mind as a player who I tipped a few days ago to me mate that I think he'll probably get a few games under Gerrard gradually, I think. But I don't think that's going to be an issue with Stevie. I think that'll be a natural thing. Gerrard will just naturally play young players if they're ready. I don't think it'll be a case of, you get some coaches, don't you, who just are very reluctant to do that, but I think Gerrard will do it.
You can take your pick with the Chucklemakers, the 2 brothers, Caleb and Carney. It's also Jacob Ramsey also played in midfield on Saturday. His younger brother Aaron's in the academy for the June Days. There's a lot of players coming through the ranks that people are excited about, and I think they beat Burnley yesterday, the under-23s, 4-1 at Bodymore. Gerrard was watching on for that. So, yeah, if they're good enough, they're old enough, aren't they? I think is the phrase. So, they will get chances at some point. Joanne Spear says, how will Super John McGinn cope without ketchup and iron brew? Now, I feel like this is becoming a bit of a meme now, isn't it? That a new manager comes in and bans ketchup. It was mentioned in the press conference to him as well. And then I think there was a story yesterday in the Telegraph maybe about fizzy drinks and desserts and stuff like that. And people are like, I can't believe these Premier League footballers have got such bad diets. Why are they serving that in the canteen anyway? I don't know whether that's been served at the canteen at Bodymore, but it's maybe just in their personal life to be more careful on what they take into their bodies. Again, it does feel a bit like a meme, but it's been asked by the fans, so I'll put it to you both anyway. Pat, do you think this is any impact of banning desserts and stuff for the players?
I think if it was for me, I'd be kicking off a bit. But as a professional athlete, I think you got to just take it with your job, really, haven't you? But I think it might have been Ollie Watkins that said, they've come in and they've made a lot of rules, and I'm all for it. I think the squad needed a bit of a reality check, and if that's banning ketchup and fizzy drinks, so that's what you got to need to do. Start at the bottom and build up. I mean, it could be a lot nastier. I imagine Roy Keane would be a lot more disciplined if he came in. I don't think he'd end at fizzy drinks.
I do wonder whether this is actually about the ketchup and the fizzy drinks and the desserts, and whether it's just a discipline thing that I'm going to come in and set these rules and we're going to change the way we do things. Does Klopp do anything similar, Josh? Do you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Klopp was really big on this sort of stuff because he's got a a degree in sports science and stuff, so he knows all about this. And one of the first appointments Claret made was to get in. Yeah, I think we snatched off Bayern Munich to get their head of nutrition, and she came to Liverpool, and we also got their head of fitness and conditioning, I think. So these sorts of things specifically play a big part if you want to become a pressing team, if you want to cover ground, if you want to do plenty of intense sprints and things like that, it does play a part. And when he went up to Scotland to first coach Rangers, he made lots of inroads, lots of early easy wins when it comes to just making your team better by just tackling all the departments that were just a bit amateurish, when it comes to like behind the scenes, not just the diets and things like that, but just training facilities and stuff. And I think when it comes to Villa, obviously Villa established Premier League side now, so there's less of those immediate gains to be made. But if he's looked at the whole case and deemed the diet and the nutrition to be an area that's worth addressing, again, it's just an easy win, and it just sends kind of an elite message, I think, throughout the club that, as you said, I think it's mad that players are sitting there eating puddings, to be honest.
Yeah, I saw an article with Emile Smith-Rowe, I think a couple of days ago, and he was saying that he's kind of now seriously started to take his diet more seriously. His diet was terrible in the seasons up till this one, and even John McGinn's mentioned about cutting out fizzy drinks and stuff over the summer, and he's in the best shape of his life. And you do wonder how these elite level, high-paid Premier League players are having such poor lifestyles anyway. But a lot of them are young kids, aren't they? So that's all they know. So if it takes someone like Gerrard to come in and crack the whip and say no more tomato ketchup, then if that helps Villa win games somehow, I'm absolutely all for it.
It's a theme that runs through the elite in football, whether it's coaches or players or whatever. So if you're going to send that message, I do think it does send that message that, listen, no, I think Gerrard's mentioned this a few times actually, but the whole no excuses vibe.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense. And if Villa have aspirations to go from where they are at the minute, a 10th, that mid-table type team to a European side, these are I suppose the 1% maybe you could put it down to, the differences over the course of a full season. Can
we really afford to go into the transfer market and buy more players after 300 million has been spent since promotion? The likelihood of moving players on or less for a cut price number, where we lose out, is even more unrealistic. Don't we just need to build a European ready team with what we already have? And we have spent a lot of money, but there was some kind of factors in there to suggest that we had to build a side in the first year in the Premier League, and this year we've had to replace Grealish, and it does take a lot of money to make that step up from 10th to 6th, doesn't it? So I expect Villa will have to spend more money.
The managers like to bring in their own players, don't they? They like to mould their squad with who they think can work for their system. Like Dean Smith signed Cash, Watkins. We made 100. Well, we didn't make 100 million, but we received 100 million in the summer. Spent, 92 or what? So effectively we haven't really spent. I know we have spent a lot, but we haven't, like a net spend, we haven't really spent that much. So I think Gerrard will 100% be dipping into the transfer market. I think it's rumoured about 50 million he's got. I think I read somewhere. It's probably going to be attacking the midfield, which I think we all thought over summer would be one of the areas we were going to strengthen a bit more.
Yeah, I think it's something that is going to be a lot easier as well, with Gerrard seemingly favouring this, this 4-3-3 system, 4-3-2-1, you could maybe call it. They seem to favour at Rangers, because then if you're going to stick with that every week, which obviously Smith wasn't really doing, and Smith seems to replace Grealish by just getting in a number of players who could compensate for his quality and for the drop in quality rather than building towards a specific system. But with this system that Gerrard seems to be establishing, the positive with that is, if you're just playing that every single week, you can just gradually over time with each passing window just make the players executing that system better, basically. So if, say for example, in 2 windows time, Villa are playing with exactly the same system, but they have a better left back playing the system, and they have a better number 8 playing alongside McGinn. Or not that Jacob Ramsey isn't capable, because I think he really isn't. Given this level, I'm not sure Gerrard will actually look to upgrade that, but and Morgan Sanson as well has got potential there. But I just think over time, if you're making these upgrades, like Liverpool did this. I know we're not supposed to talk about Liverpool, but since day one, Klopp selected 4-3-3, and he just built and built and built. Now you've got better centre backs. Now you've got Mo Salah instead of Lallana or whatever it was, and now you've got Alisson instead of Mignolet, and just gradually you just get better and better without changing a great degree. You just get better players playing for your team.
How do Villa follow that up? now against Crystal Palace. It's not a first easy 5 games for Gerrard with Brighton, Palace, Leicester, Man City, and forgot the last one. It's not an easy 4 games. But how do they follow that up now? Because as much as that Brighton win was good and the clean sheet was important, if you go and lose away to Crystal Palace, it's almost not worth it, is it? You've got to go and back that up. So how do they do that, Pat?
It's another tough game. I think the only people Palace have lost to this season might be Chelsea and Liverpool. I don't know if that's certain, but I think they're a really good side. They've started really well. I used them as an example of how well a manager change can go. They're fairly unrecognised for the league, signing a Premier League legend. So, yeah, they're a good team. I remember I've got a friend who's a Wolves fan and they played, I think they lost 1-0 to them a few weeks ago, maybe 2-0. And he said they were just all over them from start to finish. So I think it's going to be a really competitive battle. They've got good players in Conor Gallagher. I think Eze might be coming back into fitness now. Zaha. It's one of those. I think they're a really talented side and they're going to be a difficult game.
Because you kind of consider that they've had a pretty good season so far, and Villa have had a pretty rubbish season or average season, and we're only 3 points behind them and can, I think, potentially overtake them. I don't know what the goal difference is if we beat them. Josh, how do you assess this one?
Yeah, I've been seriously impressed with Crystal Palace this season, actually. Very, very good. And I think, although they are where they are on the table, I think twice they conceded with literally the last kick of the game. I think I watched both games and it was just very, very unlucky.
Can you watch ours so they can concede in the last minute?
Yeah, possibly, yeah. I don't think I'll watch a lot of Villa this season, actually, but in terms of this weekend, I think Palace are really, really good, honestly, I do. And I think when it comes to this new approach that Gerrard seems to be instilling, where you basically force the opposition to the flanks, Crystal Palace have Christian Benteke up front, who is very, very good in the air. Edouard's good in the air. So, and Conor Gallagher is just a genius when it comes to arriving late in the box. So, if they're going to face the same crossing threat that they faced against Brighton, I think you're risking a little bit, basically. Whether it'll work or not, I'm not sure. But another thing as well on Crystal Palace is their defensive numbers. They currently got the 3rd best defence in the league when it comes to expected goals against. Better than Liverpool. In fact, no, I think it's level with Liverpool's. Been expected to concede the same amount of goals as Liverpool so far, based on the shots that they've faced. So, given Villa's strength on the defensive side in the first game, and Palace's strength on the defensive side throughout the season, I would not be surprised at all if this was 0-0. But, just the predictions to throw out there, could be wrong.
Yeah, they did concede 3 to Burnley in the last game, so I'm fully expecting a 4-0 Villa win, just for something totally random. Pat, very quickly, just from you, a score prediction, just for fun.
I'm going to say we'll grind out another 1-0, I think. Not another 1-0, just 1-0. I don't know why I thought it was 1-0 every game.
Oh, I'll absolutely take a clean sheet away at Palace and a 1-0 victory. I think we'll call it a day there, gents. Thank you very much for your time. Josh, thank you as always. I do appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Thanks for having me.
And hopefully I've filled in adequately for James Rushton. If you end up watching this, James, don't sack me. Pat, thanks for your time. We just give a quick plug to our last Football Manager episode that we did yesterday, I think it was, where we're struggling. Danny Ings has scored 1 goal in 18 games, so we're no better than anybody else. So you can go back and watch that if you like. We'll be back on Saturday evening for a post-match reaction to the Palace game. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you again in a few days' time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to AVFC Extra, an additional dose of Aston Villa content for you, brought to you by the Claret and Blue podcast team. If you enjoyed the episode, please do get in touch with us, get involved in the comment sections, tweet us at Claret Blue Pod, or leave us a review on iTunes. We really do appreciate it. We'll catch you again very soon with some more content. Until then, up the Villa.